One day, a man took a knife and did something bad to his wife by cutting off one of her hands. The pain was unbearable, and all Alice could do was scream, her body trembling in shock. He even chased her again, saying he would cut off her legs if he caught her. She couldn't understand how the man who promised to love her could do something like this. The woman ran as fast as she could, not believing what was happening. Her heart raced as her mind struggled to process what just happened. How could her life have turned so cruel? How could her own husband do such a thing to her? It all started with Mr. Emmanuel getting married to Alice. They looked so happy, but little did Alice know, darkness was slowly creeping into their marriage. But Mr. Emmanuel had one problem. He always got angry over little things. Whenever he got angry, he shouted at everyone or anyone who dared to talk to him. His anger was like a storm, unpredictable and terrifying, and no one dared to challenge it. People tried to talk to him, telling him to change, but he never listened. Each attempt to help him only made him angrier, like pouring gasoline on a fire. He would just bounce on them. Even on his wedding day, he got angry and chased all the guests away. Everyone stood in shock as the celebration turned into chaos. His wife, Alice, didn't bother about her husband's cruelty. She still loved him. Her love blinded her to the truth. She believed he could change. She didn't know that this love would one day hurt her. Sometimes when Emmanuel became angry, he threw away things like kitchen utensils, spoons, and even pots. His rage knew no limits, and everything around him became a target. Sometimes he even threw them at his wife. There was a fateful day when Alice served him food on the table and he tasted it. The air felt thick with tension as he took the first bite. He didn't like the taste. "Look at the nonsense you prepared as food, you miserable woman," he said, and poured the hot food on her body, causing her pain and suffering. The scalding heat burnt her skin, but the hurt in her heart was even deeper. She only arranged the broken plate and walked away in pain. With every step, the weight of her love for him seemed to grow heavier. And even with this, she still loved her husband, and no one knew why. Alice's mother noticed the bruises on her face when she came to visit them. Her eyes widened with concern, but Alice quickly looked away, hiding the truth behind a smile. But she lied to them, saying she fell and got the injury. She lied to her parents just to cover up for her angered husband. Her heart ached as she kept the secret, knowing that the love she had was slowly destroying her. Even though her parents still suspected that the bruises might come from her husband, they had advised her to leave the marriage. But Alice was stubborn and hoped that her husband would change. Mr. Emmanuel, on the other hand, lost his job due to his anger issues. It was a typical day and his temper flared once again. He mistakenly shouted at his boss one day, and this led him to get fired from the office. Some of the other employees tried to convince him to plead for forgiveness, but he didn't care. His pride consumed him and he couldn't admit he was wrong. "I'd rather stay without a job than ask for forgiveness," he shouted and left the workplace. Now, Mr. Emmanuel is jobless. The weight of his choices crushed him, but he wouldn't admit it. He ran out of money and now depends on his wife's food and even sometimes asks for her to lend him some money. Alice was working, cooking, providing for the family, and still getting maltreated by her husband. Her stress unmatched, but even her endless efforts couldn't erase the pain. He didn't even care whether Alice was now the breadwinner. He still maltreated her whenever he liked. He gets drunk sometimes and comes back home late, still fighting with his wife if she tries to complain. The night was always unpredictable, filled with more shouting, more chaos, and more hurt. Even with all these things happening, Alice still values her marriage and believes that things will get better. She held on to hope like a lifeline, but it slipped away with every argument. Well, her belief was in vain because things never got better. It got worse instead. But as this continued to grow, something very bad happened one day, something everyone was scared of. It felt like the breaking point, the moment things would spiral out of control. It finally happened. The angry husband did the impossible to his wife. It happened that fateful evening. Alice came back from the market very late. She felt uneasy the moment she stepped inside, knowing something was wrong. She hurried to the market that day and forgot to prepare a meal for her husband. And worse, she came back late too. Immediately she saw her husband and the anger on his face. She had never seen him so angry before. Her heart sank and her legs almost gave way under the weight of fear. She quickly went on her knees to apologize, for it was too late. Her husband rushed into the house and pulled out a long knife like a cutlass. He came out, pointing the knife at his wife. "I swear I will end your life today. Cut off your empty head and hang it for the bed to feed from," he said, pointing the knife at the woman. Alice adjusted back immediately when she saw her husband with the weapon. Her pulse raced, her body trembling in terror. She continued to plead, but Mr. Emmanuel never listened. He went attacking her with the object in his hand. It was like a dream to Alice. She kept moving away from her husband as he tried to attack her with the knife. Her feet were light, but her heart heavy. This couldn't be real, but it was. He tried to hit her, but she dodged it. Her instincts took over. Every movement, a desperate plea for survival. He tried again, but Alice would run to the other side of the room. But then he raised the object, aiming at his wife, and finally got her, hitting her hand and making her disabled immediately. The pain was instant and sharp, like nothing she had ever felt before. Alice saw her hand fall out of her body. The horror of it all made her vision blur, as if the world itself had turned upside down. She couldn't believe what her husband had done. Now she was one-handed. But it looked like her husband wasn't even content. He still tried to hit her again, but she ran out of the room with her hand, the other cut off and bleeding. Mr. Emmanuel went after her, chasing her with the object in his hands. Her body ached, but her mind pushed her to keep running, to escape the nightmare. Alice ran with the pain, never looking back. The love she had for her husband vanished in that moment. She continued to run, and her husband didn't stop. He chased her until she got far into the bushes, and he lost sight of her. Alice hid under a tree with her heart pounding in fear, the hand still dripping with blood. The cold night air did nothing to calm her shaking body. She could not believe her husband did that to her. Alice walked without one of her hands that night to meet her parents. Each step she took was a reminder of the nightmare she had lived through, the pain from her severed hand still throbbing. She realized the marriage was not for her. At least she had seen the worst. Her husband was a demon, a person she no longer recognized. When she got closer to her parents' place, she thought about how they would feel knowing what their son-in-law had done to their daughter. Her heart felt heavy as the thought of their disappointment and fear washed over her. They had warned her from the start, but she never listened. She had thought things would get better. She had been wrong. She walked into the house and met her parents smiling and drinking together. They were caught off guard by her sudden appearance, their warm smiles vanishing the moment they saw her. Their smiles were cut short when they saw their daughter with one hand, and the hand was wasted. "What happened to you? What happened to you?" Alice's mother screamed as she saw the horrible thing that happened to her daughter. Her voice cracked with emotion, full of disbelief and pain. Her voice cracked as she explained to them what happened and how her husband tried to take her down. Each word was painful to speak, but she knew it was the only way to make them understand the gravity of the situation. The parents could not believe it. They knew Mr. Emmanuel was the angry type, but they didn't expect his anger to reach this point, a point of trying to kill his own wife. Anger burnt on their faces as they watched their daughter cry, the weight of her pain hitting them harder than any words could explain. "Enough! I'm calling the police. No one would tamper with my daughter this way and go free," Alice's old father said sadly while he took out his phone. His hands shook as he dialed the number, but the anger and sadness in his voice made it clear this was no longer about just protecting her. It was about justice. "There's no time to call the police. We need to get our daughter to the hospital. She's losing a lot of blood. I can't watch her die," Alice's old mother said sadly, her voice thick with worry. She wiped her tears away, her concern for her daughter's life overwhelming everything else. That night, they rushed her to the nearest hospital. The cold wind and the sharp pain in her hand didn't matter as much as the fear that her life was hanging by a thread. Alice was treated with bandages on her hand. The doctors worked quickly, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was clear that the damage was done. They brought her back the next morning. and there she regretted the day she agreed to marry her husband. As she lay in the sterile, quiet room, the reality of what had happened hit her even harder. Her marriage had promised love, but it had only given her pain. But what happens with her husband? Is he going to go free for a crime like that? Well, the old parents swear never to let it slide. They couldn't stand the thought of him walking away unpunished after what he did to their daughter. They couldn't watch a man treat their daughter like an animal and still go free. They decided to call the police and make him pay. The anger in their hearts burnt like a wildfire, and they were determined to make sure he faced the consequences. They were about to go to the police station when they found someone standing at their door. It was Mr. Emmanuel. He came to apologize for what he had done. Though it was a fake apology, he didn't mean it. "What are you doing in my house? Oh, you came here to cut our hands too, just like you did to our daughter?" The old parents barked at him. He went down on his knees and pretended to be sorry. His actions seemed desperate, and Alice's parents couldn't tell if it was guilt or fear driving him. He faked tears, acting like he didn't know what he had done. He was pretending because he didn't want to end up in jail for his crime. When Alice saw him that way, she was fooled by his innocent face. Her heart wavered, and she remembered the man she once loved, the man she thought he could be. Then she pleaded with her parents to forgive her husband. "Maybe he was used by the devil," she said. "I swear it was the devil. I am a changed man now, no more anger issues," Mr. Emmanuel lied. The old parents believed his lies and forgave him. They were blinded by the hope that he could change, but in their hearts they knew something wasn't right. He went back home with his wife, happy because his plan had worked out. Alice followed him home, thinking he was truly changed. Her heart was full of hope, her faith still strong that love could fix everything. But she did not know that her husband was still that angry man, and the worst was yet to happen.